Hey y'all, this is Anna Alexander and this is Dish About the Dish, where the foods we eat tell the stories of our lives. And today I am chatting with Elizabeth Hunter, whose new book, The Bone Scrolls, are out today. Details will be down in the description below. But not only are we talking about her new book, we're also talking about her travels and her new home in Ethiopia. So let's go. So, Elizabeth Hunter, hello. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Excellent. So I love asking this question to people who I know are world travelers, which is, what is one of your most memorable meals? For whatever reason, memorable meal.
There have been a lot. Can I mention two? Can I mention two real quick? Because they're polar opposites. So one of them, I was traveling in London with my sister and we got to go to Ottolenghi, which is Sammy Tabibi Yotam Ottolenghi wrote the Jerusalem Cookbook. It is one of my absolute favorite cookbooks, and I got to go to the restaurant and it was amazing. And it was just like a total lifelong dream, because that's the cookbook I recommend to everybody. It's probably the one I use the most. I love Mediterranean cooking. And the recipes in there are so great. And then they also go through the history of the food and, why do Israelis and Palestinians burn eggplant? What is that about? What is the eggplant burning? Why is it so delicious when you do, and so they kind of go through the history of different foods that are really typical. So I got to go to Ottolenghi, which was amazing. Loved it. And then the other one, and it was a nice restaurant, but it didn't feel pretentious. It was very comfortable. It was long kind of family style seating, which I really love. The other one that just popped into my head was, I was traveling in Xinjiang, which is the Uyghur Autonomous Region in the far western part of China. Mm-hmm. It's a very unique region. And it's much more Central Asian. It borders Kazakhstan and Mongolia and Afghanistan. So it has it's a very different culture. The food obviously is very different. The Uyghur people are actually Turkic. Okay. And so if you think of Turkish food, there are a lot of similarities. And so we were walking through this older section of town, and my brother my brother loves food. And when I tell you he loves food, I mean, if you go out to dinner with him, the table is full. Mm-hmm. He lives and works in China, and so I think he's picked this up because it's a very Chinese cultural thing as well. It's you never want to run out of food at the table for your guests. So as long as they're eating, you're ordering more, which leads to some misunderstandings with Americans, right? Because we're taught to eat everything on our plate.
Exactly.
And so you have some very interesting meals. So my brother loves food. He's great. He always knows exactly what to order. So we're walking through this little tiny section of this town in Kashgar, Kashgar, and he just stops and he turns and he's like, "We need to eat there." I'm like, "What do you know this place?" He's like, "No, it just smells really, really good." And so we walk in, and it was so tiny. It looked like a complete hole in the wall from outside, but you walk in and it's this beautiful old building, and it had the carved wooden rafters, which you don't see in Kashgar very often anymore. And it was a very family place. There were kids over in the corner playing a game on one of their parents' phones, and there was another it felt very family, and it was genuinely some of the best food I've ever had in my entire life. The best noodles I've ever had in my life are in Xinjiang, in the Uyghur Autonomous Region. Uyghur noodles are better than any other noodles.
So how are they different than what we would normally assume from
they're
on
hand
the
pulled
East Coast?
So they're not extruded. Yeah, so these are the hand pulled noodles, and so there's a chewiness. Yes. It takes a really long time to make them, but there's a chewiness to them, and there's a texture that you don't get in American noodles. It's impossible to duplicate that unless you're physically and I think it has to do with the gluten.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the way they build the gluten in the noodles.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. For as much crap England gets about their food, Everyone I speak to, their most memorable food memory takes place in England, London, somehow, and I find that
There's amazing
delightful.
restaurants because they
Oh,
keep inviting all these people from other parts of the world to come in and cook for them.
I know, it's amazing, and it's like, if you go to London, eat the food. It's delicious.
Yeah, it really is. And it's encouraging. There's the joke, obviously, about like the best food in London is Indian,
Right.
which, is maybe not wrong, but there's great Indian food in London. But honestly, there's some really, really gifted chefs doing excellent things with traditional English food, which is really exciting to see. And you get the same thing in Ireland as well.
Yeah.
25 years ago, I think Irish cuisine was very just homespun. It was very, very simple, I would say. And now you have this whole young generation of chefs who are coming up because I'm sorry, some of the best seafood in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's an island, right? Of course,
Yeah.
It has great seafood. Some of the best seafood, some of the best dairy in the world. Irish butter, as much as I've traveled, by far my favorite butter ever.
I have some in my fridge right now.
I do too. Like, I don't buy American butter anymore because it's just not as good.
Not as good. Yeah.
Yep.
So you have a book coming out soon, if not now, when this goes, The Bone Scroll.
The Bone Scroll is coming out August 24th.
Yep. And I noticed that it also takes place in Ethiopia, which you were just at, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So I remember the story. Your first trip there was like I think it's like National Geographic camping something.
It was a National Geographic expedition.
Yeah.
You can pay to go on their expeditions with them, and that was in January of 2016. Mm-hmm. And that's when I met my husband, who was working for the company that had contracted with National Geographic. He worked in tourism. And so that's how we met. And obviously we stayed in touch. So I consider Ethiopia my second home now. I probably know more about it than the average bear. We have a house there now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's why we were there for so long. We were doing paperwork. So we have a home there. We have, my husband's whole family is there. So it's very much my second home.
So what's there about like the Ethiopian food culture? Because I think every place has their own food culture that either surprised you or you went, this is great. I'm latching onto this forever.
Berbere. Berbere is Berbere is the spice blend of Ethiopia. It is the most typical flavor. Like if there's a smell or a scent or anything that just makes me feel like I'm there, it's Berbere. And it's Berbere. Berbere spice. And you can get it, and it's one thing to remember is it's a spice blend. So it's like garam masala or something like that. There's like 18 different ingredients in this. Mm-hmm. And it's primarily made, you can buy it obviously in the store, but like my mother-in-law makes it. Yeah. And she'll make like these giant batches and then she sends it to me, which I'm very grateful for. So I think if there's one, but like if you've ever had Ethiopian food and you've had like any kind of stew with a red sauce, that has berbere in it. And it is, it's one of those things that's completely unique to Ethiopia. But I think at the same time, it really demonstrates kind of how food culture has developed there. If you've never had Ethiopian food before, everything is served on, well, not everything, but most everything is served communally on like a big giant plate, like the size, like a decent sized pizza, right? So big, and it's served on injera bread, which is a sour flatbread. It has kind of a spongy texture, and then you rip off pieces to eat. So you're eating with God's forks, your hands. Generally, you eat communally, though obviously during COVID, people, restaurants have kind of changed that. And you can order individual plates and that kind of thing. a lot of people still do. So if you're eating with your family out at a restaurant, you know, whatever, you're already sharing germs anyway.
Yeah.
So you have injera, and then you have on that injera, you will have, like if you go to a restaurant, you might have a lot of different things. If you're eating at home, you might just have one kind of main dish, but they're called woks or stews. And they're very much more familiar to an American audience would be curries.
Okay.
All right. So this is a sauce and some kind of meat, some kind of vegetable, all mixed in. So it's like a stew. And then you put those on the bread and you eat it with the bread. And it is delicious and wonderful. Injera can be quite sour. So people who don't like sour things, that might not be their thing. But one of the nice things is at most Ethiopian restaurants, you can ask for bread and just eat it with bread. Or if you like naan, you could use naan instead.
Excellent. Yeah. Now that sounds like it's just colorful and rich and spicy. And
very rich.
All of it.
Yeah, very, very rich. Lots of butter, lots of oil. And yet when you see Ethiopians, they're generally quite thin. So I don't know how that works. I guess it's just genetics.
Yeah.
Because my sturdy Irish frame just loves all that butter. It is a lot of, it's an interesting juxtaposition because when I am there, I usually am eating more meat than anywhere else. They eat a lot of meat, except when it's fasting time. So Ethiopia is about half and half Christian and Muslim. And so both of those religious traditions have a lot of fasting days.
Right.
And for fasting days, a lot of times you're not eating anything, but most of the time, you know, you're not going to go 40 days without eating anything. So like for Lent, because my husband and I are Orthodox, and so for Lent, we're not supposed to eat any meat. So it's vegan only during like a large part of the year, actually, because there's quite a lot of fasting days throughout the year. It's actually a very easy country for vegetarians and vegans to travel in because but fasting is very common culturally. So you might be fasting during an off time for personal reasons, or if you're ill, you might, you know, the doctor might recommend maybe a fasting menu for health reasons. So every restaurant you go to will have a fasting menu. And so, yeah, and so it's a great place for vegetarians and vegans to travel because that fasting menu will be primarily vegan.
Right.
It might have a little bit of clarified butter in some things, but for the most part, it's going to be vegan.
And so when you say meat, what kind of meats are typical to Ethiopia? Because I don't picture them with a lot of cows there.
So many cows.
The cows?
So many cows, Anna. Oh my God. So many cows. I think maybe more cows than people.
Okay. Good to know.
Many cows. Yeah, and beef is by far the most common.
Okay.
And there is a lot of livestock. There's a huge livestock tradition and animal husbandry tradition in Ethiopia. Very ancient. The cows look different. It's a different breed of cows.
Okay.
But yeah, so many cows. Goats, sheep, no pigs. Neither Christians nor Muslims in Ethiopia eat pork.
No pigs.
So I've never seen a pig in the country. Yeah, but lots of lamb, lots of goats, and you know, America kind of sleeps on goat meat.
Yeah,
because we think they're cute, and we don't want to think about that.
You know what? The goats aren't as cute as people make them seem. They're kind of like that weird beard going on, and they just kind of go.
The eyes can be a little creepy. The eyes can creep you out, I think. Yeah, there are some funky goat eyes. Goat is delicious, you guys. I hate to break it to you, goat lovers. And I am a huge fan of goat dairy products. I love goat cheese of all kinds, but goat meat is tasty.
Yeah.
Goat, I mean, ask an African. Goat meat is tasty meat.
I've kind of gone into bison here and there.
Bison is great too.
But it is different because it doesn't have as much fat into it. So you got to kind of have to boost it up so it's not dry and crumbly. But yeah, bison's also very...
Can I give you my short rant about beef versus bison?
Okay.
Every American should be eating bison.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be eating beef.
I don't. Yeah, I rarely.
Bison is the native large herbivore for our continent. We should be listening to our native people and our native eaters who have been eating bison for years. That I love and I think there's something to be said for keeping a dairy industry, because we like fresh dairy products and we want those locally made. But the beef industry as a whole should be a niche industry.
Yeah.
Main protein of American people of all colors and races should be bison. That is what is adapted to live on our continent.
That's excellent.
So that's my little rant. And it tastes delicious, and it's super healthy for you.
And it's super healthy for you. Exactly. I just wish it wasn't so expensive, but yeah.
I know. But like, if it was grown widely, it would, if there were herds everywhere, it wouldn't be that expensive.
Exactly. So
that's my tiny rant.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the Bone Scroll and how it's feeding into because it's like, what, 5th or 6th of this series?
It's the 5th in the series. It's part of a very large vampire universe. But the Elemental Vampire universe, the Elemental series started in 2011 with A Hidden Fire. That was my very first Elemental Vampire book. And that was the first in the Elemental Mysteries book. And what I did is I built this fictional universe, but I didn't want people that I kind of created different entry points, if that makes sense. So I've written different series within the same universe, but like, you don't have to go back to the very beginning and read 20 books before you get to the one that sounds interesting to you. I didn't want to do that. So the Bone Scroll, very definitely, you could start with book 1 of the Elemental. It's the Elemental Legacy series, and that's called Midnight Labyrinth. I try to write every book in this series as a standalone, but of course, because it's the 5th book in the arc, you're not gonna get all the things if you read it as a standalone. But you could, in theory, read it as a standalone.
The Easter eggs are the best. The little Easter eggs are the best.
There's so many Easter eggs, and there's so many little things. And the hardcore book lovers will tell you have to go back to the very beginning and read everything. It's the 5th book in this series, and then I wrote 3 prequel novellas for these characters too. So these 2 characters, I've spent more time with them than any other characters, and I'm not sick of them yet, which I'm kind of shocked at. I'm shocked and amazed that I'm not sick of them, because there's certain characters that, like, by the time I'm done with the book, I'm like, no, I never want to write you again. Forget it. Be glad I haven't killed you with a giant asteroid. It's the 5th book in the series. It's coming out August 24th, and it is set primarily in Ethiopia. So all of the books in that series take place in a different place. The first one's set in New York. The second one is Puerto Rico. The third one is southeastern China. The 4th is Eastern Europe, and the 5th one is Ethiopia. So it's a very, it reflects my own travels. And also I kind of like the idea, like when I was growing up, we did not take fancy vacations. We went camping. But I loved going into a book and feeling like I had traveled to a different place and time. And so I always want to kind of create that with my readers too. I want you to feel like you've been on like a little mini vacation once you get finished reading.
That's great. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, because your writing schedule makes me exhausted just looking at it. So it is very much appreciated with you being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Anna. It was so great to see you. It's been so long.
No.
Eventually, we're going to see each other in person again.
Someday.
All right, take care. I love this series. I think it's so fun. Thanks for asking about food. I could talk about food forever.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it as well.
The best.
Thank you again to Elizabeth for taking time out of her busy writing schedule to chat with me, and I hope you learned as much as I did about the Ethiopian food, and now I need to go out and find a restaurant near me and hope it's as good as the places she has been. And don't forget to check out her new book, The Bone Scroll. Again, details are down below, as well as the links to her social media site so you can go and find her. And I want to thank you for joining me today. It is greatly appreciated, especially if you hit that like and subscribe. That way you'll see when I have new videos posted about just about anything having to do with food and beverage. So thank you again, and until next time, y'all.